Hello and welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Buy Round Interview Show. Today I'm joined by a fan favourite of mine. I can remember being a 15 or 16-year-old on the terraces of Nosey Road, St Helens, watching this man take control of the competition, dominate the Super League competition, brings back instant memories of the 2001 World Club Challenge against the Brisbane Broncos. Before he come to St Helens, a North Sydney Bears hero, State of Origin and Test player, a Rothmans medal winner, which is quite the feat. None other than Dave Fairleigh. So thanks for joining us, Dave.
James Graham, great to be here, mate.
It is an absolute pleasure. Spoke there about your professional sporting career, but you're currently the head coach relations manager for the NRL.
Club relationship manager, NRL, but essentially, deal with the head coaches and any concerns that they may have from a game. I mean, a wide range of concerns, but predominantly, a phone call and or a playlist and responding to that. So it's been good. It's an interesting role. It's a fantastic role. It's our third year now doing it, and built up a really good relationship with the coaches.
You enjoy those. I wouldn't call them interactions, but you enjoy those, I guess, challenges, because I think if you're a coach and if I'm a coach and I'm contacting you, I've got an issue with something that's happened to my team.
Yep, indeed.
That can never be rectified. The past can't be rectified, but maybe they're looking for something to the future.
It is hard because, often, what they're, you get sent in, they're questioning, subjective calls. You say he's offside, the referee says he's onside. You say the pass was not forward, the referee says it was forward. So, you quite often, dealing with, subjective calls. And I'll always put my hand up and say, when the referees are wrong and admit error. And alternatively, when the coaches are wrong, which happens often, I'll let them know that they're wrong, and they respectfully. But there's not many people, I guess, in clubland that say no to the coaches. So when you start your email off with thanks for your email, but I disagree, and you've got to really be articulate and understand the laws of the game, which I'm not an expert, so I do seek advice on a bit of that, but you've got to explain why a rule went a certain way. In particular, if the questions are around matters of laws of the game, why did this happen? So the conversations, some coaches are phone call guys, some are email guys, some will always thank you and appreciate the time and effort you put in, and some don't. But I don't take it personal. Look, they're emotional after games. I was the same after a game. I didn't like referees. I didn't think anything they did was right. But I tell you what, one thing, after working with them closely for 3 years and observing everything they do, I think everyone should spend some time in there, and you gain a totally different respect for how smart they are, how much they care about the game, and how much they generally don't want to actually give stuff away. They if the players listen to the refs and the touchies and responded to them, there'd be a lot less penalties in the game.
I think you're right, and I agree with what you're saying. I want to take you back to a comment you made about coaches surrounding themselves with yes people and people that...
Did I say that?
That in general, a head coach, they don't get told no.
Yeah.
They don't get told they're wrong. And then they face that for the few occasions in a week where they're told no in their professional environment.
Yeah.
Do you ever get much pushback from that where, okay, I've submitted a clip or I'm calling you on the phone or via email. This is my issue with in the 60th minute of this game. This happened to our team. You guys messed up. You come back and go, well, respectfully speaking, thanks for your... I I, as the coach, receive that email back, do you ever get then any further pushback to say, well, hang on a minute, no, you're wrong?
I've had a couple of double downs, and I've gone back again. And when I know I'm right, I've gone back again. But alternatively, Gemma, I've also looked at it further and analysed it and sought deeper clarity. And I've gone back and said, my apologies. I was actually wrong. So yeah, look, I'm not one of those guys that's going to get on his high horse and say I'm always right. But don't send me in a playlist, when you're being hammered in a game by 30 points and the playlist you're hooking into the referees, because there's a lot of reasons why, a team loses over the course of the 80 minutes. There's so many things that happen, and very, very rarely does it ever really come down to a refereeing decision. Rarely.
I agree, but again, I'm just thinking about coaches, their mindset, doing all they can to get a slight edge. And if I'm the coach of my team, the results happened. Most likely a loss because
I do hear from winning coaches.
You do hear from winning coaches.
Absolutely, yes, yep, yeah. But on losing coaches, look, the main thing is look. Every team pushes the boundaries where they can. It's a cat and mouse game. And look, they probably get away with more than what they get caught with, but the referees go out there to referee what the players deliver, and they try and be as consistent as possible. But different game, different venue, different players, different circumstances, different conditions. In some games you've got 320 play the balls in a game, and consistency is just not going to happen. And the coaches need to understand the referees are doing their best and the touch judges to be consistent, but the game's not consistent, and that does cause a lot of frustration. And I understand that because every team pushes in their own certain ways, and if all the coaches, I guess, are asking, well, if you're going to hook into us for markers not square, make sure you get the opposition at markers not square. And I guess which they obviously do their very, very best to get right. Do they get it right all the time? Of course not. Like, referees make mistakes, players make mistakes, coaches make mistakes. So the role is highlighting things that happen in the game, but the conversation over with coaches, it goes much deeper as well. Like a lot of coaches opened up to me about some personal issues and some issues in the team, and even some questions around my opinion on coaching and some dilemmas that they're in. So yes, it's assessing their concerns, but it's much broader than that.
I think sometimes as well when coaches complain, obviously the event has happened, you can't change that.
Yeah.
But they're looking to get a leg up in the future.
Yeah.
And often those that scream the loudest are the ones you just think, well, I can quieten those voices. It was interesting to hear Andrew Webster say, from the coach of the New Zealand Warriors, that he doesn't contact the NRL, but now he feels as though he's in a position that he has to. So I'm only assuming after hearing that, he feels as though he can have an effect on the decision-making process or the decision-making of games that now the referees go when they referee a Warriors match moving forward.
Yeah, I don't think coaches, by going to anyone, have an effect on how the referee's mindset. Honestly, I don't think the referees...
Why do you think they do it then?
Well, they might go to the NRL, but I know, Webby's come to me many, many times this year, and I've always found him being upfront. And alternatively, I'll go back to coaches and give them information on their team without them contacting me, as if to say, hey, you guys did this last week, just letting you know, if you do it again, the refs are onto you. I'm not going to tell them not to cheat or push, if you want to call it cheat. I'm not going to tell them to push because they're going to do it anyway. So,
can you give us an example of not a team, but like a pattern of behaviour? So would it be like ruck interference? Would it be markers slightly not square, the back foot, the front foot being offside?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the core areas are, basically you've got one team trying to play the ball as quickly as you can for 80 minutes, and you've got the other team trying to slow it down as much as they can for 80 minutes. So, all of the little slowing tactics in defence that teams try and get away with, and obviously then marker defence, and then the 10 metres, consistency on the 10 metres, and teams, setting a rhythm and going early and going one as a line is, challenging for the referee.
We see that quite often on try line defence. It's so difficult to break down try line defence, and
Very
I think
hard.
one of the reasons is teams will push the envelope when it comes to ruck control because they know the consequence of a quick ruck, but also we see the edge defenders have a tendency to go a little bit earlier, which then as an attacker, if you look up, you see that space close down.
Your eye line,
you don't
get there.
You don't go to move the ball there. Often a defensive tactic is the halfback, who's usually 3 in.
Yeah.
He's the most vulnerable defender. He'll come up way out of the line
to spook him.
But they're meters offside.
Well, look, sometimes they are, and they get ID'd, and that's a challenge. It is very, very hard. Line speed, assessing line speed is very deceiving. Like good teams are moving at 7-8 metres a second off the line, and on the goal line, or if the ruck's say 10 metres out from the goal line, you've got the referee is obviously looking at the ruck and the markers, and where the ball's closest to the sideline, that touch judge will be looking at the ruck, and the touch judge on the far side, he's looking at the entire line. So he's got to marry up the 10 metres and the referee's go call, and then, if the 3-man's gone early, well, James Graham's gone early, he's interfered, and then the referee will make a decision, 6 again, and then often you see times, immediately they go 6 again because you've interfered, and then there's been a breakdown of play, which then will turn into a penalty because of an offside player.
Well, I think one thing, it's the word in rugby league that gets thrown around so much is consistency.
Yeah.
I think looking back at this season, it did appear as though the last month before finals, there was a crackdown, or at least there's evidence there that shows that the number of penalties per game was higher when compared to the rest of the regular season, and especially the beginning of the season. I think Vegas, in particular, there was a level of importance upon those games because they were going to be watched, and I think the product, the spectacle, was so important. Versus those last 4 weeks, then you compare that with the opening 2-3 weeks of playoffs.
Yeah, I think if you look at again, like there's no crackdown. Like they never talk about a crackdown, and where we're going to go out and deliberately look for this weekend. Of course, the referees review performances and areas where they've maybe slackened off on or whatever. But I know leading into the semi-finals, the amount of high tackles that were penalised was because the players were out of control with high tackles.
It did appear though that some high tackles, the causation was the attacker, not the defender, and they were still being penalised. Where I think now what we've seen the past couple of weeks with playoffs is those ones have just been told, no, it's not going to be a penalty. Same with the crusher. Some crusher tackles, I'm of the opinion they're not the reason why that play was made illegal, but it's the fault of the attacker, and the net gets slightly out of line. They stay down. Previous 5 weeks, it's been given a penalty. Couple of examples in playoffs, the bunker review and say no penalty.
Yeah, I think at the case by case basis, obviously, the NRL's got a pretty firm stance with contact to the head, and look, there's been penalties there, but there's no doubt there's mitigating factors where the ball carrier's falling to the ground, and unfortunately, there's been contact with the head. So they've been pretty consistent with what. Penalising that. And, we all look at it and go, look, it might be minimal, but at the end of the day, it's contact with the head. And, I think they've got a duty of care to maintain that. I get the whole the whole crusher thing. It's a tough one. We don't want players laying down to extract a penalty from the bunker or get the bunker involvement. But at the end of the day, the video referee will look at it, and if they think that it's reportable, they will jump in and say no, penalise it. Or if they don't, they'll just say play on and stick with the on-field decision.
Well, that is what it appears as though is being played out, which I think has appealed to most fans most of the time. We'll never be able to please everybody. One of the consequences of, I guess, you may say there was never a crackdown, but let's just say the more lenient side of refereeing, which we've witnessed, is as a coach, you're going to take it, and as a player, you're going to take advantage of the environment that has been set. So I think we would, the downtime rule, for example, came in at the start of the season. That was a directive from the NRL, which I think is fundamentally the correct thing to do. It's an illegal play that should be penalised, that teams were looking to negate, the likes of Penrith with their back three carries. Yeah. Penalty hasn't been blown in a long time. Yeah. But then if I'm coaching or playing this week and I know the value of the opposition's back three yardage carries, and I know that the referee's going to hesitate to blow a penalty for such an offence, I might just risk it.
I don't agree that they're hesitant to blow a penalty for the offence. You would be running a very, very, very high risk to deliberately go downtown this weekend. So what happened? Last year we saw, and the way the rule was applied was, everyone just took off and went downfield, and then all the good fullbacks in the game, they look up and there's a line of players there that essentially shouldn't be there. So what they ruled was, look, we'll just let that go. But if that person is, players are identified as downtown, but how they applied it was if I was identified as downtown and then I tackled you and you lost the ball, well, then it was a penalty. So they made a stance to enforce the rule, and that is if a player is in front of the ruck to play the ball when the ball is kicked, and you've got to remember the wording is intentionally running downfield. So those players who take off.
How do you prove intent, though? Well,
they're 10 metres in front of everyone else.
Yeah. So, okay.
So the dummy half plays the ball, takes off. The guy who plays the ball, passes the ball, he takes off. So who is way in front of the line is intentionally running downfield. They were very easy to get, and so they were pinging them off and penalising them. And look, the referees aren't going to get a slide rule out on kick chase, but what they will do, and it's a proactive approach, I think it's a good approach that, look, every game, every kick, if someone is downtown, they are identified. The touch judges and the referees know. But they will say, James, you're downtown. And if you pull out and let the line overtake you, so your intention now is gone, and the line overtakes you and you played no part in that play on. They don't want to get a slide rule out and nitpick people who are half a metre or 1 metre downtown. And so they're still identifying them, but players are responding to the referee. And, I with the vision that I get all of the referee audio, touch judge, bunker, and I hear it. I hear it every game. Every week I review the football and listen to the downtown IDs and I watch the players respond. And they're doing that. They've got that message. They know that a referee will call them out. But
I beg to differ, and I think as well, part of it comes through media pressure, that everybody is delighted with the current product, and I think that the referees don't want to be the bad guys and spoil it, because the players almost know that they'll never be painted as the villain in all this, and we all do have a responsibility to take care of this game. Yeah. But there's a level of pressure that goes on the NRL and the match officials to have a free-flowing game and not, as you say, nitpick and have that slide rule up. And it's such a tough dilemma to what is the perfect 80 minutes when it comes to match officiating, because do we want a game played by the rules at all times?
Yep.
We probably can't, because I think almost every ruck there would be, the roll ball, for example. Like, if one of those was penalised, if there was a roll ball penalised this week,
that wouldn't happen. And yet, look, they've tried that, and it's very, very hard to make rules that you can't police or consistently. It's it's just impossible to make sure that every single play the ball, somebody is going to touch it with their foot. But what we can have is, making like a genuine attempt, or at least getting to your feet, which, I've seen a lot of penalised with no balance and control and people ball planning and things like that. But look, I think, the game last week where Ash Klein had, he reffed what the players delivered. And some games I see and listen to, and the players dish up a dog's breakfast. And the referee, they take him on, and he either hooks into him or he cops it. And that's the balance. So I'm honestly, and this, I guess, from being where you are and working where I am, I've seen both sides of it. And there's no doubt that the players, they push, but the referees, and the good referees, they won't cop it. And look, are they going to be 100% correct every game all the time? No, they're not. That's just the game. The game has errors in it. And, the coaches, they get frustrated with being inconsistent, and I get frustrated because I've got to reply to them about inconsistencies, but that's the nature of the game. You've got to take the good with the bad, and like the teams will push in a particular area a lot, yet will send in edits about the opposition who do exactly the same thing as them. So it's an interesting job, mate, and I really like it.
I guess you're correct there. I'm thinking back to you look at your team's performance where your players are perfect. They'd never do anything like that. But as soon as the opposition do, you paint them as the absolute villain. Like, how could this possibly happen? So
I had one coach this year, and I won't say his name, but I was getting sent a playlist every week, and he's a good friend of mine. Look, all the coaches I've either worked with, played against at some stage. So this guy is a good friend of mine. I've worked with him. And he was sending in, it was like round 9, and he was sending in playlist after playlist, and a lot of them are just subjective calls. You're saying they're offside, the ref said they're onside. You're saying the marker's not square, the ref says, all that type of stuff. Yeah. And this particular game, they played the Rabbitohs. It was early in this season, so Jace Demetrio was still coaching. So I had a playlist from Jace Demetrio on his team, which was way worse than the playlist he gave me on South. So I rang him and I said, mate, with all respect, I'll help you as much as you want. Like, you know that. I'll help you any time. I said, but the amount of time and energy you are wasting on sending in just subjective calls, it's not worth it, mate. You need to be putting more time and more focus. And I find that if you put more time and energy into the reasons why you are giving things away and what you give away, and you fix that, then generally things work out for the best. And that coach, he may have sent me for the rest of the year 1 or 2 playlists, but he did ring me weekly, and they completely turned their season around and went really well and made the playoffs. And
just on that, that direct line of communication.
Yeah.
And there's like is it necessary? Like, is it necessary for a head coach to be able to contact you and say, Dave, this has happened, or I'm going to send this in? Like, if there's no change going to happen, like, is it? I often wonder, like, why a head coach would bother if they're not going to do it.
I think
but why does the NRL like almost allow it to happen?
Well, I think the referee, the head coaches, like anyone, they want clarity.
Yeah, okay.
They want reasons why a decision was made or why something happened that they didn't get a penalty, and they want an explanation. And sometimes that's a technical explanation out of the laws of the game, and sometimes it's just a practical explanation. And a lot of the stuff that I see, is, well, he's half a metre in front and you've penalised him and it's deemed as nitpicking. Yet quite often a lot of the penalties are a build-up, and you could have been warned 6 times. They don't send me the 6 edits where you were warned. Mm-hmm. They just send the edit that you were pinged on. Yeah. And I get it. So I understand all of that, and that's why I guess I'm in the role I'm in, because I talk their language. I understand what they're saying. I reply with their emails, and I can have a decent, honest phone conversation with them about where their team's at and how they can best work with the referees. And so it's all about clarity. They want to go back to their players with clarity. I love going out and spending the day at the club, where I can meet with the coach and the coaching staff, then meet with the players, and they get a lot out of it. There's a lot of stuff. You think the players know the rules, but there's a lot of rules they don't know. And
I can hold my hands up and say I've been the victim of that before. And
well, we were front rowers. You just take all the runs nobody else wants, and away you go.
Just with all that, and I spoke earlier about some of the changes that were brought in at the beginning of the season. You also have a role to play in, I guess, maybe some new rules or some changes or some interpretations that will happen for season 2025. How will all that look for you? Are you compiling or gathering bits of information or colluding with, well, not colluding, but like speaking, compiling information and then going to present to a number of people on what you think, and how does that process look like? Yeah,
so what I do is, obviously I can't watch every minute of every game. I do my best, but the coaches are my best ally in terms of information, and then I start compiling a playlist of from round one. When I start seeing things that are developing and they're consistent trends that I believe are not in the best interest of the game, I'll start compiling and editing that.
Sorry, do you bounce that off people? Because I guess, how I think the game should look and what you think the game should look like it will be similar, but there'll be nuanced differences. So you might see something, then do you bounce it off people?
No, not really. It's honestly, a lot of it's pub stuff, Jimmy. It's like, I've been involved now at this level for nearly 35 years as a player, coach, administrator. I've never seen players diving, milking, whinging. I've never seen it worse at its highest. Hip drops, where were they 10 years ago? We're at a hip drop crisis. So I sit down and I cut stuff, and there's a lot of little anomalies in the game, little laws of the game that can be tweaked. So I'll sleek some stuff off, some guidance off referees off that. Is this correct? And they'll say yes. And I'll just compile this playlist of things that teams do consistently, where this cat and mouse game, you change the rule and then they adapt and they then push it this way. So I just cut vision of stuff that is not in the best interest of the game and that we need to look at. And there's been obviously some topical ones lately around obstruction and things like that. So hip drops, I'll build a playlist and present that to the football department, which then goes to the commission, and they consider, what needs to, what we need to look at and amend. change, and then we get that back hopefully as soon as possible back to the clubs, and they can start practicing it.
So do you actually present to the commission these recommendations?
Yeah, well, the first step's obviously to the football department, and then the next step will be to the commission. It's taken to the commission, and then they'll make. They're obviously the ones that have got to look at the vision and see exactly the points you're trying to make, and why this isn't or why this is something we should consider changing, and all of it's in the best interest of the game. We want to keep the game high ball in play and entertaining and all these types of things, but we've still got to maintain the fabric of our game with rugby league and the fundamentals and the basics of what the game is all about, is being played hard, tough, fair, and finding that right balance of not changing the game into something it's not, and keeping the fabric of the game. And I think we've been doing it pretty good.
Well, the numbers sort of speak for itself, really. Like in terms of fan engagement, viewership, everything, participation numbers is bigger and better than it's ever been. Are there any things on the radar for you now as you look towards season or the off season of 24 into the start of 25?
So I'm like right now, obviously there's still a couple of weeks to go, so I'll continue to review, what games and deal with the coaches, from week to week who's remaining, and I've had some really good conversations from some coaches that have been knocked out about their opinions of where the game's at and things we need to look at. And Michelle and I, obviously I've pretty much got most of all that covered, but there've been some coaches who've raised some good points and some things that we should look at, and then once all that's done, I'll get that playlist ready. And
are you all right to give us any examples of things that I guess the NRL would be, or you in particular, would be looking to try and eradicate from the game?
Oh, well, I think like little things. For example, the obstruction. Like we look at there's the confusion. I'll go back a few weeks ago with the Dolphins played the Knights up there, and there was an obstruction, and I'm not denying that the obstructions have been ruled inconsistently. Again, I think that's something we need to pull right apart, and I do believe there's some really key indicators that we can address and articulate to the general public that indicate what is an obstruction, and because it's difficult, because we've got players who are deliberately contacting and getting themselves accidentally in the position so a lead can't get through.
So the defender will engage the contact and fall over. And
so we've got blokes initiating contact who fall over to try and get the bunker involved. We've got guys that are making defensive decisions to come outside in, which then naturally the guy's trying to get through the hole, and that hole now is narrowed because the guys come from outside in, and then you've got a 4-man coming from inside out. So you've got to work out, well, has he also initiated contact, or could he have tucked in behind?
Yeah.
So, but I do believe, if you look at some of them, it's pretty easy to see what comes first, and a lot of them is how has the space been created? And if you pause it at that moment before there's been any contact, it's often, if well executed football, it's often an outside in player has had to come in because the 7's gone deep into the line, and the lead is a support player until the very, very end, which that guy has to stay on him.
Yeah.
And that's what the good teams do. They execute that, and that guy's a lead. And then once that goes out the back,
the space is created.
From
the defence read rather than.
Well, that's right. And
the attacking run, but no one's been obstructed, but the defender comes in. So on the obstruction, I'm genuinely torn. And no matter what you decide as the NRL, will come for criticism. So if we went back to the black and white, where if a defender has been impeded in any way, shape, or form, we're going to penalise it. And if that's the rules of engagement, people really shouldn't argue. But what will happen is, undoubtedly, players will milk that.
That's right.
And we'll see examples where there was no way a player would be able to get there. So one example that springs to mind this year was Jared Hargreaves runs through the line.
I know the one you mean.
Joey Manu scores in the corner.
Dylan
Edwards is coming across, sort of bumps into Jared. I mean, did Dylan mean to do it?
I've got a view on that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. It doesn't appear as though Dylan Edwards has the ability to get across.
There is an initial contact earlier on with Dylan. You're trying to get around the referee, but why is Jared running so far through the line as a lead and continues on into the in-goal area? And so there's a lot of things. Why is he doing that? When he runs through, why is he looking that way? Not like he's just running through and then, Dylan, he's coming across and then is he going to get to Joey Manu in the corner? He's not to know Joey Manu's going to go right foot, and come in closer. So if he decides to dodge Jared, maybe he stops the try. But he didn't do that. He had the collision. So you force the referee and the bunker into making a decision they shouldn't have to make. And this is the thing about milking, which it's just, I've never seen it as bad. Like in every part of the game, the entitlement of players who just expect stuff for milking. Well, the referees just go neutral on it. So if you milk and you deserve something, they're just going to go neutral and they're not going to reward you, particularly in the play the ball in the ruck. They're just not going to reward it.
Look, I think the overwhelming majority of the fans would, apart from when their team's playing, would love that to happen. So, but is it for the... Again, I don't know if what I'm asking for is exactly what I want, but it's the black and white way, the best way, and then nobody can ever complain, and it's never subjective. So, you know what? Just every attack, the consequence for this could be attacking football becomes more difficult, and then therefore the product suffers. But if every attacker knows and goes out there knowing full well they can't obstruct any player in any way, shape, or form, otherwise it's going to be a penalty, nobody can ever complain.
Yeah, well, that's right. But the game's just not black and white. Things eventuate differently. Obstructions and plays and tries happen in a millisecond out of nothing. And I think when you start applying black and white rules, that to me is going to end up in a world of hurt. Like I think you got to assess obstructions on their merit and really critique the execution of the attack and what that has done to the defence. And then if the defence has stuffed up because of that, well, I'm on the side of rewarding the attack if that hole's been created from good attack. But then there's a whole other, which is easy. That's really easy. We can all do that. But then you're going to have ones where the attack has created a 2-on-1 and created the space. But then
hit the outside shoulder and stop the ability of the defender.
All that. So that becomes a deeper assessment. So
I guess those ones in the middle where, some people... and there's been a number of incidences this year where some people have gone, there's no way they're going to get there. It's not an obstruction. Yeah. And some people it's easy to make a case. And even, if that's happening against your team, like we said, like your team never commit obstructions, but they get plenty against them. A coach could make a case for, look, the defensive the intricacies of defense and my defensive system means that it can have, I know what you're saying about some of those plays that happen, but if you are inside me, and I'm outside you, I react off what you do, and if you're even like ever so slightly obstructed by a player, that makes my decision then impacts my decision, and the knock-on effect is all the way over. but it can just be the most minuscule incident where if we're this, we just let that one go.
Well, we got every defensive movement. Yeah, it has a trickle-on effect.
Yeah.
So, if there's an outside-in movement and then the next defender, he doesn't follow in, well, there's going to be a space there for a lead to get through. Alternatively, inside pressure as well. If you want to release off a player and you're not feeling comfortable because you've somewhat been held up by a lead, so I can't release because you've got to navigate your way around a lead. Well, at the moment, we're seeing those guys throw themselves to the ground. And, let's be honest, there's been times where diving's been rewarded. So we need to look at that. We can't have a game where we reward people who throw themselves to the ground to get the bunker involved. So, I would much rather go down the path of if you're coming through and you're making a tackle and there's a lead, get through, rather than you initiating contact and throwing yourself to the ground or just making a tackle and I couldn't get there. You see it all the time. Players can stay on their feet and keep competing.
Yeah.
So if you want to stay on your feet and keep competing and you nearly get there in the end, well, the bunker will look at that and go, we acknowledge James Graham, contact with James Graham. He's kept competing. So we'll
factor that in almost.
But you could go down the path of, if in the opinion of the bunker, that you've initiated contact and thrown yourself to the ground and stopped competing, we could say, well, we acknowledge the contact from James Graham, who stopped competing. We're playing on. So in other words,
he's taking himself out.
Bad luck.
Yeah.
You want to throw yourself to the ground, that's your problem. You're going to lose all rights. That's one approach you could take. Yeah. And look, these are just this. I'm not saying this is going to happen.
Yeah. But I'd love to see that coming.
I think this is pub test stuff.
Yeah.
Because we all look at games where we see stuff that's rewarded that we don't like. And I feel for the refs. I feel for the video refs because they've been put into a situation where they've got a rule on something that is they know probably deep down they don't like, but until there's a clear directive or a change in how we do things, they're going to continue to do that. So again, a really deep discussion around obstruction, feigning and milking and diving and remonstrating and staying down and grabbing the back of your neck to get the bunker involved. We need to look at all of these things because this is the fabric in the integrity of our game. And I said, in 35 years, I've never seen it as bad.
Well, I think you speak for anybody that's watched our great game for that length of time.
We don't like it.
I don't think anybody does.
No, and it's why if you're a coach, why wouldn't you coach it?
Yeah,
which is what I talk to coaches, and I know coaches coach it because it gets rewarded, and we cannot have a game like that, and we need to do something about it. And credit to the NRL, they're going to do something about it.
That's what it comes down to, the governing body taking responsibility to get rid of that out of our game. And I understand it's a tough job because coaches play to win, players play to win by almost any means necessary. I think
absolutely
as a player, probably pushed the envelope. There was limits to what I was willing to do.
Yeah.
But
they played it. You do anything you can to win. And I've had coaches, like in my role, it's funny because I go to the games, the coaches somehow think I make the decision. They need someone to sink the boot into. So I'm that, right? It's like Monday afternoon, mate, that blokes can't wait to get down the pub and sink the boot into the bunker.
Yeah.
It's like this person that they just want to hammer. And I've had people that I'm work with and play with and they've lost the game. I generally go into the sheds, catch up with the coaches before the game, after the game, and have a chat. I've had people that I'm good mates with, and mate, won't let me in the shed. they'll ring me on Tuesday and say, sorry, Dacey, you know, mate, I was a bit of I said, it's fine. I get it, mate. I was the same. I hated losing, but I don't take it personal, you know.
The start of the show, I spoke about your glittering playing career, but we'll start with the North Sydney Bears, where you really made a name for yourself in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
I spoke about how it was a different competition. It was
Mate,
very
it was
different
different back then. You know, I was like I just turned up to an open day trial. I had a couple of offers to go to clubs, but Mark Graham was my hero. And I went to North Sydney because I wanted to play with Mark Graham. And he retired and went to England the year that I got there. And just the classic, you know, junior Australian schoolboys, SG ball, jersey flag, under 21s. And, you know, my apprenticeship in the game coming through. So when I first made grade in under 21s back in 1989, you know, left high school, year 12, 88, 89, it was like, oh, wow, like it was, you know, this is a whole different league. And found my feet, and then halfway through the season, I got picked in reserve grade, which that team we went on to win the grand final. But this is where it was different. So my reserve grade team back then, I was 18, but my reserve grade team, we had a bunch of country hardheads who just wanted to play in the big smoke and were never going to play first grade. We had a bunch of guys that are up and down first graders. We had blokes that had played for Australia, Kerry Bosted. We had blokes that had played for Queensland in Gavin Jones, Ian French, Brett French. We had blokes that played for New Zealand in Clayton Friend. And so I had regular, like, absolute hard heads in, and it was a different game back then.
Yeah. That level of reserve grade is pretty full on, right?
Yeah.
Like,
oh, mate, and I can remember. So we had a prop who he was never going to play first grade, but he was one of those guys you wanted in your team. His name was Wayne Takata, and he was as hard as they come. And I remember one of my very first games in reserve grade. So I'm playing against other men.
At 18,
they've played regular first grade, and he was standing there, and there was an opportunity for me to go in and really just jam this guy in behind and just do what Wayne had done in country rugby league, and I didn't do it. And he got me and he said, don't you ever miss an opportunity ever again. And that's what you got brought into as a kid. You didn't come in to reserve grade or New South Wales Cup and play with other kids who have just been in flag. I was playing with guys that have, like Kerry Bosted was a legend of the game. He'd played probably 25 tests for Australia.
Yeah.
So I'd come in with a bunch of first graders, and you got taught how to use your elbow. You got taught to get square. Like there was get squares everywhere. If someone got you, you got them back, and it was like, now we're even.
Yeah.
I remember once early on, I don't think I might have just been very early on in first grade, and Steve Kearney had come in, and he was having a really good season at the West Tigers. He was playing second row, and I was playing second row, and he come up, and I hit the ball up, and he got me a beauty, like just blindsided me, knocked the wind out of me. Oh, it hurt, like really hurt. And I thought, righto. So for the rest of the game, I was playing, and then I always knew where he was. And then I got the ball once, and he come in high. He was coming in to get me again, and I just put my elbow up and just got him right in the throat. And he went down, and I said, now we're even. And he said, sweet. And we got on. I'm saying it's right, but
there was just
that's the environment that I come in on, and
it's just how it was, right?
Yeah, and the thing was, early on back in the early 90s, the first grade, you had two fresh reserves, and your other two reserves come from reserve grade. So quite often I'd play full game in reserve grade, and I'd sit on the bench and I'd play 25, 30 minutes. But one game in first grade, it was the North Sydney versus Manly at North Sydney Oval, I played a full game in reserve grade, and Gavin Jones, the first grade second row, got injured after 2 minutes. And on I went, and I played 2 full games. And then, but the thing was, you go to training on Tuesday and you get flogged. Whether you played on the wing in reserve grade, you got flogged. And so the science and then, you know, if I was, because I was super professional and did the right thing, and, you know, around now I'd play till I'd be like Elliot Whitehead. I played till I'm 35, but I couldn't do it. I had another year on my contract at St Helens, and I physically, in the end, I'd been really healthy, but then in the end, I'd hurt my shoulder, and I thought, far out, I don't think I can do this again. And my body was letting me down. And that was all from back in the day with no science in the game.
It's funny that they try, some of the youngsters now, they get told to be, they're held back for that longevity piece, but as a youngster, you wouldn't want, I don't know if you'd listen anyway. You know, like, you take yourself back there, play reserve grade, you get a chance to play first grade. Like, you're not thinking about yourself at your early 30s. No. You're just going, get me out there. At the North Sydney Bears, you went on quite the trajectory. That's a difficult word. From trajectory. Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say. Oh, but you're going upwards. You're making your way through the ranks.
Yeah.
You end up winning, was it the 94 Rothmans medal?
I did,
that you won?
94,
like,
yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Because you look at the list of players that have won that award. It's for the best and fairest player in the league, which is not just within your team, but within the league.
Yeah. That's now, it's because of cigarette advertising, it's now the Dally M.
It's the Dally M, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Mate,
and you won it by a record number of votes as well.
I did.
For the time, when you think of the players that were playing at that time of year, other winners, people like Langer, Stewart, Daly.
It was a big...
it's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah, and you should, and for an edge or middle forward as well.
Yeah. And it was hard for me because, 94, and I guess going back when I first started talking about the science, you know, it was like, if you didn't do heavy squats, we had a thing in the gym, like you had the squat rack and then the leg press, and the leg press had a name, and it was called the dog machine. And so, like, if you didn't do heavy squats, heavy power cleans, all these types of things, we did road runs. And then what happened for me early on in my career is that I had a number of injuries that should have been rested, but I was young, and you know you want to play first grade, so I listened to the club, and on 3 separate occasions, you know, I had a really bad toe injury, which the only way to fix it's to stay off it. But no, I needled it every week.
Needle in your toe.
Yeah. Then I got a plaster cast put over it, and I played in left boot size 13 and my right boot size 12, just so I could get on the field.
Sorry, a plaster cast on your big toe?
Yeah, just on the side. So now you're talking injuries. So that cost me a quarter of a season. Then I got shin splints one year, and then I got told to run them out. So then I missed the first 10 games.
Run off your...
Yeah, so then I missed the first 10 games of the season with shin splints, and then the final straw for me was, so I had a head clash and I with another player, and I fractured a bone in my jaw, and I remember going to getting an X-ray, and he said, you've broken your jaw, you need, it needs rest. You could play, and I had the CEO with me at the time, and I'm young, and he was like, let's just, we'll just keep this under your hat, you'll be right. And
CEO saying that?
Yeah, and then so I wanted to play. I was crying because they've said you've broken your jaw, you're going to be out, and we'll roll the dice. So I listened to them. I rolled the dice, and then first game, Manly. We played Manly at Brookvale. First tackle, I got hit in the jaw, and out for 10 weeks. So after about 93, I made a very conscious decision. I will play when I'm fit. And if I don't think I can contribute to the team or give everything I've got to the team, I'm not going to play. And I don't care whether you say I'm soft or whatever, because I've just spent 3 years listening to everyone here who's an expert, and you've done nothing but cost me games. And you get that with maturity. So coming into the 94 season, I was healthy, I was fit.
That's so crazy how you were, I guess, taken advantage of as a youngster. That would never happen now.
No, it never happened.
That's only, what, like 3 decades ago?
Yeah, well, I can remember 89. So when my first time I come from 21s into reserve grade and I started playing against men, they come to me and said, I think it's about time you start doing some weights. So I used to go in the visitors' dressing shed after training and do set of chin-ups, set of bench press, set of shoulder press, set of squats. That was my weights program. But, I played with an injury. I had a really bad chronic AC, and when it gets that bad, they cut the end of your clavicle off. And you have that injury now, that's 6 weeks mandatory. Now, I missed one game, needled it, played with it, you'll be fine. You can't do any more damage, it's just pain. And so I got to the stage where you get this with maturity you got a bit of equity and you've played some decent footy. And
you feel like you have a bit of a voice as well.
I just said, no, I'm not playing. I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
No, I'm not good enough. I'm not fit. I'm not playing. And I copped a bit of flack for it. So going back to the 94 season was the first year. In 93, I put all that behind me. And then the 94 season, I just was playing well. The team was playing well, and I was consistent, and obviously with consistency and staying injury free and healthy, and then managed to string a lot of good games together. And we could never quite get there in the end. I think at Norse, we got close a few times, but I think you look at the teams that won the premierships through the 90s. We needed a Freddie, we needed an Alfie, we needed a Ricky, a Laurie, a Jeff Tuvey, Cliff Lyons. We needed one of those guys in our team. We had some good players, and no disrespect to anyone in our team, but we didn't have that real X factor superstar player. And maybe if we had, maybe things would have been a bit different. But the Rothmans medal was interesting because it was leaked. I don't know if you read about that, but it was leaked. No. So in the day before the Rothmans medal, a guy come and said, mate, you've won the Rothmans medal. It's been leaked. And I said, you see, I didn't, mate, I still wouldn't even know how to put a bet on a horse. I wouldn't have a clue. I've never been a punter. And the day of, it got confirmed again, and it had been leaked, and guys won money on it. It was myself, Beaver got second, Beaver Menzies got second. I think Paul Green was come third. And I remember, so it got confirmed it was leaked, and they changed the rules from then on, and so it wouldn't get engraved, and who the winner was. But I remember going out to Alice Springs after the end of the season, because that's where Centrebet was based. And back in the day, and Jared Daffy used to run Centrebet, and I'm sitting there, just out with a couple of mates, and g'day, Dave, how are you? So, hey, nice to meet you, mate. He said, I'm Jared Daffy, run Centrebet. You cost me a lot of money. But it got leaked, and it was true. And I know people who put money on me and other people, and they won. So
hopefully they got you a beer at least.
I don't know. I didn't get a beer. I didn't get any. I'm happy with the medal.
Yeah, fair enough.
Got the medal.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, that got you into State of Origin and representative contention. You were speaking earlier about your Origin debut, which happened to coincide with somebody else's final game.
My debut, so 91. So it was my first. I played a bit of first grade in 89, as I said, coming off the bench from reserve grade, but started in first grade in 1990. made the city team. I was in the Kangaroos train-on squad in 90, which I was pretty proud of in my first year. And then 91, got picked in the third Origin game. I was on the bench. I got on at half-time or just before half-time, I think. But my first Origin was Wally's last. And
cheers.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Yeah.
And Tim Sheens was the coach. And, yeah, driving down Caxton Street, back then, 91, Wally's last, Lang Park, the bus, we should have been driving a Humvee. It just got pelted. It was full cans. They were just, riotous. And I remember Tim Sheens, he was in the seat in front of me, turned around and said, "You okay?" And I said, "Mate, I was fine." You know, as a footballer, you just love this. It's like the atmosphere and, Wally's last ever game of Origin, I'm involved in it. We lost, but I was really happy with how I played. And, certainly a great experience, something I remember.
You ended up winning an Origin series. Won
in 93.
Yeah.
And then I sort of had I had a really sort of checkered in and out of Origin from sort of 91 through to 97. I was in the team or out of the team, and
what do you think?
Really consistent.
What do you think what do you think about when people say it means more to Queenslanders?
I think.
Like obviously you've experienced that extreme event of Wally's last game. Hard to envisage that happening for one of the New South Wales greats, but
look, it is a different mentality. I've played for New South Wales, coached in New South Wales. I've coached in Queensland. I've coached the likes of Thurston and Morgan and these guys. So I've seen firsthand Origin in New South Wales and in Queensland. There's no doubt that for me that there is a different mentality embraced by the public around their football team, around their Origin team. They feel part of it. And I know talking to Madge in depth before or when he got the job in the lead up there, all of his planning, how much he looked into the depth of why does it mean more to Queensland? And I said to him, mate, we've got to stop saying it means just as much to us and that's rubbish, because when you look into every single stat and in minute detail, they have absolutely wiped the floor with us in every department in Origin, in everything. They have dominated. If you go back through history, from man of the matches to series wins to everything. And so instead of saying, no, it means just as much to us, that's crap. Well, maybe you need to say, well, maybe it doesn't. Why have they been so dominant? Why have they won so many games they shouldn't have won? Maybe it does mean more to them. Maybe we need to ask that question and look into it and why. And I know Madge did look into it with great depth and it paid off for him.
Yeah.
And he did.
What do you think the answer was that he found?
Well, it was very obvious straight away that it was about the state. It was not about the team. It wasn't about any individual. It was always about the state, the community, which is what Queensland, you always got the feeling Queensland is always about, we are Queenslanders and that they're playing for their state and then it's next man up. And, New South Wales' greatest strength has always been their greatest weakness is that this talent pool to choose from. You walk in and the New South Wales have got all these players and Queensland walk in and it's just go, okay, well, we've got you and you. Well, you go, you're up, you're in Origin.
Yeah.
And, there's no greater example a couple of years ago when I think Cam Munster got injured and they just said, Tommy did, and in you go.
Yeah.
And they won. And they've got less people to choose from. And I certainly think they just embrace the community more, and they just did everything better. The way they engaged with their former players, and credit to Madge, he's really first year in has put in a program, and he did this year. He did a Queensland on a Queensland. Like he lost first game and he had to win 2 in a row away from home, and mate, that's a big effort, and you could see in each camp the way that they're evolving, and they were never talking about. It was always about the state. It was always about the people of the New South Wales, and that's the first time I've really heard that consistent messaging. But there's no doubt, when I was in Townsville at the Cowboys and it was Origin time, I just went, mate, this is just. I don't see this in New South Wales.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't see it.
Yeah, for you as a New South Welshman to be up there and to have that observation.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I did have some really good conversations with Madge in the lead up around all of this, and provided him with a lot of information around how dominant Queensland have really been, and do the players, when they come into camp, do they actually really realise over the course of Origin since 1980 in how many departments and how many areas of Origin where Queensland have just absolutely wiped the floor with us.
It's an interesting take, that. Very interesting.
Yeah.
You spoke about choice. 94 Kangaroos.
Yep.
We were just going through the teams.
Yeah.
The choice between Langer and Stewart in the halves. That 94 Kangaroos team was absolutely stacked. You probably didn't know it at the time, but it was the last ever true Kangaroos Tour.
The last final one.
Yeah.
3 months.
3 months away with some interesting characters as well.
It was a great time. Great time.
So you were saying you left...
mobile phones.
No phones, but you left what?
We left
September?
on the 29th of September. It was a couple of days after the grand final. Canberra won the grand final. It was Mal's 4th tour. So he'd been on 80, 82, 86, 90, 94. And so he was a skipper. And I can remember, I'd never been to England before, and we got off the plane.
Welcome to paradise.
Exactly. What can I say? And then we got off the plane in Manchester, straight to the hotel in Leeds, dump your bags, Mal's the leader. Boys, for you, 15 minutes, straight out and on the Terps. And
how old are you at this point?
So 94, the Kangaroo Tour, I just turned 24.
Oh, right, okay.
I just turned 24. So
were you a bit, and obviously you spoke about being very much a professional. Were you expecting this, or was this a shock to you that it was like...
I wasn't expecting it. No, I was expecting it, because when I went into Origin in 91 and then again in 93, my first one in 91 with Wally's last, the first 3 days, you just drank. And I'm thinking, I'm like, I don't really drink. I train hard. I'm fitness.
Yeah.
We're going to play, boys, in a week. And Blocker's leading the charge, and it's just like, okay, this is what they do. And away we went. And but there's a time you just you got to knuckle down, and times have changed. But the Kangaroo Tour, it's a long time, so you do have to enjoy yourself. And we certainly did that. We were based in Leeds for 2.5 months, and then off to France, and phenomenal team. Yeah, as you said, like I look back, and Walters, Meninga, Daly, Stewart, Clyde, Lazarus, Eddinghausen. I'm going to miss players out, but it was just an incredible football team. Great experience to be the last. I think that was going to be the last one ever. Who would have thought? It's a shame. I'd love to see them come back. Yeah, because we had the midweek games, and then you play the club teams, and then the weekends you play the big games. And I guess I was fortunate and unfortunate, whichever way you want to look at it. But we got it. A few of the forwards got injured, so you had to play. So you think I played at least 16 games on the tour.
Wow.
At least 16, maybe even more off the bench. And that's what you did. They took away 26 players, and it was a great time.
The last game against France as well.
Yeah,
Mal's last ever game. You know what? You was talking before we got on air, and I didn't realise Mal Meninga's last ever game was for the Kangaroos. His last ever game. That was his sign-off game.
Mal's last ever game was playing for Australia in a test match against France, in France. And he will never remember it, but I do. We won by 70, and he hadn't scored a try, and I'd scored one, and I was on my way to scoring another, and I passed it to Mal, and Mal got a try. So I'm sure he wouldn't know it. But
I reckon he knows.
Yeah,
I reckon he knows. The '94 Kangaroos. You come back from that, and it's not too long till the Super League war erupted. Was there murmurs on that tour of what was about to happen? It's hard for me. I know the Super League war happened, but I don't know about what the consequences of that, the build up. Was there murmurs in and around camp then?
Yeah, so you go back to the early 90s. Brisbane versus Canberra was like Melbourne versus Penrith in the last couple of years, with both teams absolutely full strength. And you go through those two teams in the early 90s, Brisbane Canberra games were just phenomenal, like the players in the team. So a lot of those guys made up the Kangaroo Tour anyway. So we're on the tour, and I was hearing the stories about this thing called Super League. I'd actually heard them talking about it and what that's going to happen and a little bit what it's about, but didn't fully understand it. There was myself and Greg Florimo were in the Kangaroos from North. So in terms of like superstar teams, we certainly weren't one of those. It was Canberra and Brisbane. And we came back and I'm not sure what part of the pre-season, but all hell just broke loose. Kangaroo Tour come back, maybe Christmas happened in the new year. I don't know the date specifically, but it just blew up, right? The News Limited, there's going to be a new competition. It's going to be called Super League, and clubs signed with Super League, Canterbury and the Raiders and Brisbane and whoever else. And then there was the ARL, and then players were just frantically getting contacted by everyone. And luckily, I'd come off the Kangaroo Tour. I'd won the Rothmans medal. So, I was
you were in demand.
I was sought after, I guess. So I'd spoken to the Super League, and they said, mate, we want you to sign with Super League. I said, yeah. They gave me an offer. And then I sort of just sat on it for a while, and for me, it was about. I personally think North should have went over to Super League. That was my personal opinion. But
did you have any much sway there, or
no? We spoke about it as a group, and the executive and that they wanted us to stay with the ARL. And look, long story short, we ended up staying with the ARL, and I remember once. This is when it all sort of blew up. It was all anyone was talking about. So we're in the middle of pre-season training now. So you go to training, and we went to this particular training session in pre-season, and it was a dog's breakfast. We were dropping balls. No one was concentrating. It was just the worst training session ever. The coach just said, everyone, come in, right, listen, every one of you is just off. Go and sort out whatever you got to sort out, because all they're hearing about is James Graham. Did you hear about James Graham? He's just going to ARL. He's just got $200,000 and signed a 4-year deal for $500,000 a year. And then everyone was just talking about money everywhere. Yeah. So the coach just told us to pee off. Yeah. Go and sort it. Go and talk to whoever you want to bloody well talk to, and come back when you want. So we said, righto. So I had a shower and jumped in my car, and I went down to Phillip Street, parked, and I went in there, and I forget it, there was all the managers standing there as a group, and there was a line of about 100 players, and they were just standing in this line. And then in this room there was Phil Gould, Bob Fulton, and Jamie Packer. And I've walked in. I remember seeing Ricky, and Ricky had said, he said, had I signed with anyone? I said I hadn't.
Like Ricky Stewart.
Ricky Stewart.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was Ricky. God, I hope it was Ricky. Anyway, it was a good player, whoever it was. Anyway, I had a little bit of equity and coming off a good year, so I went in the express lane. I didn't go in
in the long queue.
I didn't go in the long queue. I went in the express lane. So I went in there and I sat down, and they said, "Have you spoke to Super League?" I said, "Yeah, I have." And they said, "So have you signed?" I said, "No." Well, if you sign with us now, we'll make your contract this. And I think I was on at North then. I think I was on $250,000 a year. So we'll make your contract this. So I said, well, my contract's nearly that anyway. So they doubled it. So for the next 3 years, so my contract went to $250,000, it went to $500,000 a year, there and then. I said, right, okay. And I was sort of like umming and ahhing, and they said, well, if you sign with us right now, we'll give you this. And they handed me a check for $200,000, and I took it.
Wow.
So sitting there in that room.
What was this, 90?
This would have been January, February 1995. So I had, my contract had just doubled for the next 3 years, and I had a check in my back pocket for $200,000. And mate, people do better than me. That's good, but I'm telling you, the stories I hear about, what Chief got bringing the Knights down in the minibus, and I know, equally some players in Super League got big money, and a lot of players got a lot of good big money. Everyone got, was. I remember walking out of Phillip Street, and I literally, I had a pair of thongs on, board shorts, t-shirt. I sat down on the steps and just went, what just happened then? Like, I was just walked out just thinking, I can't believe this. And that's what happened. And everyone in North Sydney signed, but it was just crap for the game, because what happened, everyone was just talking about what money people got, how much money someone was got, and he got that, he doesn't deserve that, and it's not my go. Didn't really like it, and then we obviously all the North Sydney players end up staying with the ARL, and it was weird. You talk to players now, and we had our competition, and Super League they had their competition, and we had our Origin series, and they had their Origin series, and final series, and our final series, and our Test series, and their Test series, and it's just two completely separate rugby league competitions going on in Australia, and one was called Super League, and one was the ARL, and it caused a lot of divide, and it was just bad for the game, and look, obviously there's people there can tell a way better story than me about the stuff that went on behind the scenes, particularly blokes like John Quayle and people who were heavily involved in it. But in terms of the players, financially, mate, the players did very well out of it, and some players blew it and went around and didn't think of this thing called tax that you have to pay. So a lot of players got caught out, but luckily I wasn't one of those.
Oh yeah, because if you get a $200,000 check, you've got to pay.
Well, yeah, you got to pay tax on it, and
you're not thinking of that at the time, are you?
No, you're not. And then what happened? Sort of the extenuation of the whole Super League war, North Sydney. So that was 95, and then the competition merged back together. I think in 95 we had 20 teams. So we had the Western Reds and the Adelaide Rams and Melbourne Storm, and no, they hadn't formed. Melbourne Storm formed on the back of the Reds and the Rams folding, And so I think we had a 20-team competition, and what was I going to say about that?
Did the Bears have to merge with Manly, right?
Yeah,
It was
so
like a forced
that's where I was going
merger.
with that. Yeah, so the end of the day, there was a lot of pressure on too many teams in the competition. So North Sydney built a stadium, or started to build a stadium on the Central Coast, and we're going to relocate to the Central Coast. Long story short, weather was against them. They kicked South out of the comp. South rallied in the streets. Mate, hats off to George Piggins, and really admire and respect everyone at South Sydney for how they fought for their club, a foundation club. North Sydney, mate, rolled over. And,
really?
Yep. And I was really disappointed in.
Rolled over in terms of taking this merger?
There was no fight. There was no fight. They got kicked out of the competition, and they just accepted that and so did Manly, and they formed. Manly and North Sydney formed, and guys resigned from executive roles in the North Sydney Bears, and then resurfaced 3 months later with a new role in the Northern Eagles. And there was no fight about keeping the club, and so the North Sydney Bears formed this team with the Northern Eagles, with Manly, called the Northern Eagles, and I got wind very early on that I wasn't going to be part of that team.
Really?
Yeah, which going back to, so I played the previous season and a half with a shoulder that needed a reco. So coming into the 99 season, 98 season, 99 pre-season, start of pre-season to end of the mid-99 season, it's like, come on, mate, you got to stay with the Bears. You've been with us your whole career. And with all remember I was telling you about the injuries I had when I was a kid, and I've just played a season and a half with a shoulder that needed a reco. I knew that I wasn't going to get picked up. I got tipped up. I wasn't going to be picked by the Northern Eagles. And I just thought, you know what, you can get stuffed.
Yeah.
And I said, nah, I need a shoulder reco, which I did. And I thought, I'm going to, no matter where I go, I'm going to be fit. I'm not going to another club, and I'm not going to be not 100% fit. So what happened is when at the end of the 99 season, literally they got everyone involved in North Sydney, and they put us all into a room, and the administrators walked in. And the guy stood there and he said, right, if we read your name out, you are in the Northern Eagles. If we don't read your name out, good luck in finding a club. And
hang on. They brought the whole squad into a room.
Yep.
And one of the administrators just stood at the front of the room.
Yep.
And said, I'm going to read these names out. You're with us. If you're not, if your name's not read out, see you later.
Gets better. Yep.
Go on.
Yeah. So we're all in the room, and there's me. Well, I just think of the three guys that I spent the last 12 years with in the back rows, myself, Billy Moore and Gary Larson. So we're all in the room. I knew I wasn't getting called. I'd been tipped up. So we're all sitting there, and names are getting read out, and there's obviously, as your name gets read out, you're in the Northern Eagles, so you leave the room, and there's less and less people sitting around this table. And in the end, there was myself, Gary Larson, Brett Dallas, Matt Sears, Billy Moore, a couple other guys. And then I think it was the football manager came back in, and he said, unfortunately, you've not been picked up by the Northern Eagles. Good luck. This is September. Good luck with finding a club next year. You now become a creditor, because Norths went bust. So back end of this Super League contract I was on, this was at the end of that. I was still on that. So the thing was, if you got picked up by the Northern Eagles, you got paid in full. If you didn't get picked up by the Northern Eagles, you become a creditor from the North Sydney Leagues Club.
Good luck.
And you got, I can't remember what we got, 20 cents in the dollar or whatever we got.
Yeah.
So this is September.
So was it a financial decision, do you think? Because you would, if you get picked up by the Northern Eagles, then they've got to pay you the full freight.
Potentially, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't really delve into that too much. To be honest, I didn't want to play for the Northern Eagles.
Yeah.
I was ready for a change, and so I'm sitting there, and I get a phone call from Warren Ryan, who was coaching Newcastle at the time. He said, "Mate, love you to come to Newcastle." And I thought, wow, this is the phone call that this is why I got my shoulder fixed. This is why. So it was like, mate, I'm coming. There's Andrew Johns, Matthew Johns, Matt Gidley, Mark Hughes, Adam McDougall, Danny Medeiros, Tony Butterfield, a rich history, a great club. And I was really looking forward to going there. And Warren Ryan's one of the greatest coaches of all time. So I went there, and but there was no money. So I didn't care because I had a chip on my shoulder, and I had a point to prove. And I went there, and I was on $1,500 a win. So I was gone from being on $500,000 a year. I was on $1,500 a win, nothing a loss. They gave me a Commodore to drive up and down, and they helped me with a bit of rent on a unit in Merriweather. And that was the start of. Have you ever heard Wayne? You heard about Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah, the ice hockey player.
So, I was listening to something he said. I mean, he's won everything you could imagine in the game. And someone asked him, "What's your greatest achievement ever?" And he said, "The greatest thing anybody can ever say about me is I never dogged it. Not once did I ever dog it." And I'm thinking, wow, mate, this is a guy who's played 21 seasons, done everything at the highest level. I never dogged it, but I can look back at games and I go, and it's funny, I played a lot of good games, but I can remember the games, they're vivid in my mind now, the moment that I didn't give the best that I could have got. I live with that now. I can remember those moments.
Wow.
I went to Newcastle and I had a chip on my shoulder and I had a point to prove and I was going to jam it up everyone's, right? So I played for $1,500 a win at the Knights and I got nothing for a loss. And I said from day one pre-season, I'm not going to dog it, not once.
Yeah.
Am I ever going to take a shortcut, an excuse, nothing. And it takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of energy, and I was very conscious of it every day. And I'm almost certain that I'm the only person in the history of the Knights that's won every award that's on offer in first grade. So I got Player of the Year, Players Player, which the Knights built on the Players Player Award. Their motto is be the player that everyone else wants to play with, and that was the one I was most proud of.
Yeah.
Coaches Player and the Excalibur Club, which were a group of men associated with the club that help out financially. So I won every award on offer in the club, and which I was so proud with because I had this point to prove. And I remember we played the Northern Eagles, and I played well, and with Joey Andrew Johns, obviously our captain, and Warren Ryan comes in after the game. Press conference. I was like, let's go.
Did you let rip?
I didn't let rip respectfully, but I've been waiting for a long time. Just it took me over a year, but I knew, and this was all part of. I'm a big believer in hard work and perseverance. Always pays off, and hard work and perseverance beats talent. And I went in there with this mentality of what I read about Gretzky. I'm not going to dog it, and I can go back to Newcastle now, and I know, and I feel that proud when I go to Newcastle, when I can walk into a room with the likes of, because I was replacing Chief, so that weighed heavily on my mind.
Yeah.
And then before Chief, you had blokes like Mark Sargent, who'd won a Rothmans medal. And already there, the other prop was Tony Butterfield, was as hard as they come. And then, so that all played heavily on my mind. And then, like when I walk into Newcastle now, or when I walk in, go up and see Adam O'Brien and spend some time with the team, and to walk into a place knowing that you've got the respect, mate, it's a great feeling. And that I guess, yeah, I'm still proud about what I achieved there now, because I played there for nothing. I got nothing. I had to sell 2 rental properties.
The mentality of just, I'm not going to dog it and playing for fuck all.
Yeah. And I had to sell 2 rental properties to get by. And so what happened then, obviously, I think Gids told the story the other week about we're up 16-2 at half time we got beat. I was devastated. Anyway, so the Knights, as you know, won the competition next year, but Michael Hagan, he was the coach, and they had to manipulate the cap, and they wanted to sign some players, and they just said, Dave, we don't have enough money to pay you. So I said, that's rugby league. You're in the it happens to everyone. So St Helens knocked on the door, and I'd set myself such a high standard at Newcastle. I knew I could do it again. And
I was just going to say, like, once you've gone all in like that,
so
to go all in again, because you spoke there about the impact that you had at Newcastle. That I guess a little bit aware of, but I lived that impact that you had at St Helens.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to hear that, and it probably wasn't until I did some research just how the level of play that you left the NRL with to come and then play in the Super League, and then the level that you left there.
Yeah.
At the back end is it doesn't seem to stack up. It's like,
yeah. Well, I actively, like, at the end of that, I was so gutted to not be part of the Knights again. But I thought, I've always wanted to go to England, and then and St Helens had just won the competition, and mate, I look at that team, I go through that team, and I'd have to say that team that I played at in St Helens 2001 is hands down the best team, all-round team, rugby league team I've played in.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of the greatest teams it's the best rugby league team I've ever played in. We had it's different to Newcastle. That was a great team, but Bedsy was young, Hughesy was young, Gids was young. Whereas I went to St Helens, and Chris Joint was at the peak of his career. Kieran Cunningham was at the peak of his career. Scully, Sean Long, Paul Newlove, Kevin Iro, Paul Wellens. It just went on, and so I made the same commitment to myself, the Gretzky commitment. I'm not going to dog it, and I went there, and it took a bit of adjusting, because you're coming from the NRL and Warren Ryan to England, and it was a different comp back then. I think of the players that year that went to England. It was Jason Smith, who was a phenomenal player. Him and I made the dream team that year. He went to Hull. Yeah, he did, yeah. Clydie and Mullins went to Leeds. Lammy, Fernsey, Renouf went to Wigan with Brett Dallas, who was already at Wigan, was another guy who didn't get picked up by the Northern Eagles. So there's a lot of good Aussies went there. So I went to St Helens, and I knew the history of the club. I knew the legacy that Mal had left, and I wanted to leave the same legacy of Mal. And I know Mal had 1 year and I had 1 year, and we both have been put into the Saints' top 100 ever players, which
in one season is incredible.
So I went there with the same Gretzky mindset. I knew I had to. I wanted to. Whatever I was going to do, I just had to invest the same amount of energy, and I literally had to have a physical and mental break from what I'd just done at Newcastle because it took its toll. And I was 30 and I was going again, and I signed a 1-year deal, and I learnt that you can't go to a club like St Helens and say, back home, this is what we... No. I learnt very quickly. And then I had, so blokes like I'd train and I'd be watching, and Kieran would always be watching me, and Scully would always be watching me, and Chris Joyne would always be watching me. And I didn't know it till later when Scully said I was setting the example for him how to be a professional.
Yeah.
I'm thinking these guys are watching me. Am I up to it? Am I going to fit into their team? Am I going to be one of their players? Am I going to be just another Aussie?
Yeah.
Come over? And I knew I wasn't going to be, but I knew the only way that I could prove that was on the football field and on the training park. So I got there on New Year's Eve, and as you would know, but I don't know how many people know how cold it is there. And we had a friendly against Salford on the 5th of January. And I was staying at the St Helens Hilton at the time till I could get some accommodation, and it was game day. And I was looking out the window at this canal, and these people are walking across this canal, frozen solid, with trolleys, right, straight out of the Tesco's, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm walking to Knowlesley Road, and the potholes were frozen. And I walked out onto the ground, and by this stage I'd been there, not even a week.
Yeah.
So I'm still getting to know the players.
Yeah.
I had the choice of not playing in it, and I said, no, I'm playing. Like, how do you get respect is you got to play, and that Gretzky mentality starts now. And there were players that didn't play, but that didn't bother me. And played the game. We won. I remember it was a friendly against Salford. I remember I dislocated this finger, and it was so cold. I couldn't speak at half time. I didn't even know what to do. But I didn't want to show any weakness. I'm not affected by this.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm one of you blokes now.
That.
Mate, bring it on, mate. And didn't change my jersey. I was trying not to shiver, and then got through the game and played a full game. And after the game, I couldn't move. I didn't know. I couldn't speak. I was so cold. And even talking to Paul Newlove's another guy. I didn't mention Paul Newlove.
Yeah.
Unbelievable player. So I remember talking to him maybe a month after that game, and he said, Daisy, and he'd been playing the Super League a long time. He said, that is one of the coldest, if not the coldest games of rugby league I've ever played in.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, well, I definitely felt it.
Yeah.
But I didn't show it. So we played that, and then the next game, so we have a three weeks worth of training, but the next game is the World Club Challenge against Brisbane.
I remember it well.
And so I was starting to, I played in that game, and then I was starting to fit into training, and we were training out at Edge Hill, which like in winter is like what
it's
it is.
Open as well. Like
out on the edge of a hill. Like
it literally is Edge Hill. Yeah.
You are freezing. I can't describe it. It's just like,
it's perfect to get used to the elements.
Yeah. So we trained, and then the World Club Challenge come around, and we knocked them off. And this is where, and we'll probably talk about the wide to west. And if anyone listen to this podcast, get on YouTube and just YouTube wide to west, and you'll see the try.
Matt, I've got
goosebumps.
I've got goosebumps here.
Yeah.
As soon as you mentioned it, I was there.
I got goosebumps saying it.
Yeah.
I got goosebumps saying it. And I knew St Helens had a reputation of being able to win. And I'd come from Warren Ryan, who was very defensive orientated, to Ian Millwood. We had a phenomenal football team, and I was talking to him about defence, and he said, Daisy, if they score 20, we'll score 22. And that was the mentality. So that World Club Challenge come, and for those who look at that Wide to West video, that happened to us that year, I reckon, 8 times. We had teams beat mentally. And we were down 18-6 in that World Club Challenge, and we came back. I played well. I had a good game.
I remember you played well.
You
and Peter Shields.
Yeah, Shieldsy went well. He was underrated, Shieldsy. He was a tough player. But down the left-hand side, Newey, left foot, back inside to Jointy, scores a try, Longy kicks a field goal. We knocked off Brisbane in a really tough game at Bolton. So that's when sort of I felt I was getting some respect from
the fans were just in then.
Yeah.
Like, that was it. Like that game, like every Saints fan was like, wow, these two that we brought over.
Yeah.
Like absolutely phenomenal. You know, in that game, you're coming up against Webke and Petro.
Gordy was playing.
But in Petro and Webke, arguably the best.
It was hard to tackle Petro. Yeah.
Like the best props combination, the best 1-2.
Yep.
You know, Leota and Fisher Harris would rival that now.
Yeah.
It's hard to think.
Oh, mate, they're up there with them.
Yeah. You're going up against them. You've come from Australia to England. Did you go out with a point to prove in that game?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And, mate, we had I was one front row, but we had another front row called Villa Mataltia.
Yeah.
And, mate, you talk about, like, sailing close to the edge. Like, he had a nightclub in St Helens called the Sin Bin, and it wasn't called the Sin Bin for no reason.
No.
And as you're walking out the door of the Sin Bin, the massive mural on the wall is the referee just going like that, sending him off. He was that proud of it. But, mate, he either got it right or wrong. So we had some tough players, mate, in our team.
Sonny Nicol as well.
Sonny was tough. Yeah. But we had a very highly skillful football team, and one of those teams that you knew you were going to win. We just knew we could win. So that was the first time I'd experienced the Wide to West moment with St Helens, and then I was starting to get that energy about that never dogging it feeling, and then we may have had one more game, and then I'd heard a lot about, so going back a step in the preseason, so both Matty Johns and I, we'd finished in Newcastle. Matt was going to Wigan. I was going to St Helens. Let's go on for a junket in November. So we went over there to find a house.
Yeah.
Went over there to find a house. Lovely wife. And look, we went over there. We didn't find a house. We found some pubs.
Yeah.
And I was going to Saints, so we were looking around. We went into St Helens for a bit, and we jumped in a cab, and we're going out to meet the Wigan lads for a beer, and jumped in the cab in St Helens, and the guy said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, "I was just here about my signed to play for St Helens next year." "Oh, great to have you on board. What about your mate?" I said, "Oh, he signed for Wigan." He said, "Out."
You kicked Matty Johns out?
Kicked him out. Get out of the cab. Wouldn't take him. True story.
Good on him. That's what it's like.
So that's what it's like.
Yeah.
So our next game, it was the Challenge Cup. So for people who don't know, the Challenge Cup's every single team in the country, but the Super League teams come in at about round 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So our first game, Challenge Cup game, we drew Wigan at Knowsley Road. Can you imagine? Like two of the best teams in the competition. So I'd heard about the Wigan Saints derbies. What are they? Less than 10 mile apart?
Oh, not they'd be neighbouring towns.
Neighbouring towns, yeah.
They share a border.
So you have had North Sydney Bears versus Manly derbies, but people have told me, and derby game, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's the first round of the Challenge Cup. Knowsley Road was absolutely just jammed to the rafters, mate. It was just as full as it can get. So I knew the Challenge Cup was a big deal, and it's a knockout, right? So you got to win.
Yeah, there's no next week.
And this is the mentality of St Helens again. So before the Challenge Cup starts, you negotiate. So there's a prize money, and this year was the centenary of the Challenge Cup. It was the 100th Challenge Cup in 2001. So we said as a squad, led by Jointy, who was our captain, Chris Joint, was we want £10,000 per person to win it or nothing. So that's it.
Yeah. So no match fees.
Nothing.
It's just 10 grand.
We either win it or we get nothing. So we won it. We beat Bradford at
in the
Twickenham.
final. Yeah.
And so anyway, we're playing Wigan in the derby, round 1 Challenge Cup. You know, whatever, at a Saturday afternoon, cold, and mate, we pulled off another wide to west moment, mate. They had us with 6 minutes to go. We were gone, and we did it again. And I thought, this team, the belief is just phenomenal. But that was the start of. So that game, I was 20 minutes into that game. And there's actually a photo. If you go Google Images, there's a photo, and it's from that game. I was split here, I was split here, and I had a great respect for Andy Farrell. I thought he was a tremendous player, tough competitor. But him and I, mate, we just went at it, and I was Saints' big signing. And they were going to make sure that they were into me. Yeah. And so there was Terry O'Connor, there was Betts, there was Newton, the hooker, there was Andy Farrell. They had a couple other players, and mate,
Mick Cassidy went well,
yeah, solid. And they were into me, like they were, and I can remember distinctly looking up, and we're 20 minutes of the game, and I thought, mate, you need to get your head on here. They're into you, and I flicked the switch, and I just changed, and then not changed, but I just realised, mate, you need to take it up a notch. That Gretzky theory, I'm not dogging it, but I need to go to another level because they're putting it over me here physically. And I wasn't going to let him do that. And from that day, mate, me and Andy Farrell, we had the best one-on-one duels every time. Remember the Good Friday game? And we got beat. You know, they kick off at 12 o'clock at JJB.
Yeah.
I got man of the match in the losing game. And
did you?
Yeah. And me and Andy went at it just tit for tat in that game, and
just belted
the sledging, everything. And then, but the one that really got under him was about never coming to Australia, which is a conversation I often had with players like Kieran Cunningham and Scully. And I'm a big believer, and mate, you've proven this to be the best. You've got to play with the best. You know, you should be like super proud what you did, and then to go home and win that grand final in COVID like you did, what a like icing on your career, mate. But I was always, I would love to have seen Scully come over to Australia. I would love to have seen Longy. I would love to have seen Kieran, Andy Farrell. But for whatever reason, I always find the English players that come to Australia, they're generally a success. There's not many that come out here that fail because it takes something to come here. And look at Herbie, done well.
Yeah.
The other centre was in Brisbane for a while. Reed.
Jack Reed.
Mate, good player. Gareth Ellis.
Yeah.
Phenomenal season.
He's great. Yeah.
Phenomenal season. Yourself. Gareth Widdop. Solid.
Yeah. All the Burgess boys. Yeah. Whitehead, Hodgson.
Elliott and went from the Raiders to the Tigers just recently. he's come to the end of his career. John Bateman.
Oh,
when
yeah,
he first
yeah,
went to
yeah.
Canberra.
Oh, yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just a footballer, but you could just tell had an edge to him, you know. So I think Pommies that come to Australia are tough and do well. It's a big thing, and I was always into Scully and Kieran about coming, but they never come. But that team, we went on and we won some games that we just these wide to west moments, and then I when I ran out to a full Knowlesley Road and I had the entire stadium with a song about me. Yeah. It's like, mate, goosebumps. And then so it's just like you can't back down now. You've set yourself a standard and you have to maintain it. And I just continued on with that sort of mindset of not dogging it, not taking shortcuts. I'll never.
Well, Sean Long, I spoke to him a couple of days ago, and he said, like, mate, Daisy changed it for him. Like, as front rowers, you completely changed it. Your long minutes, your level of skill as well, which you've probably not spoken about. He was like, I just love playing with him. Like, he'd lay the platform. Yeah. Then he'd find an offload, find a pass. Yeah. And like you say, that was the St Helens way. It was, we'll score more.
I had a great connection. So Longy, Sean Long and Kieran Cunningham. So we won pushing forward. We should have won the comp. Longy did his ACL 3 weeks before the grand final. We got beaten the prelim. But for the entire season, I got this connection because at this stage, I'm 30 now. So you know how to play the game. You know where you need to be. You know what you got to do. And you get to the stage where you know everything about how to play front row, but now your body's saying you can't do it. But I still had some left. So, but they were educating me in how to play the St Helens way of football, and I was educating them in terms of I just had this connection with Longy and in particular with Kieran at dummy half about when and where I wanted the football. Because they knew if I can get it then, they will benefit from it as well. And I used to call them short plays. And,
I can remember them. Yeah.
And even with both of them, but in particular with Kieran, I had about 4 little short plays with Kieran. And when I called them and we got them on, mate, something good happened. Yeah. And Kieran was just a genius.
He was a master.
And he could execute and, mate, tough, far out.
Well, he was so big as well as a dummy half when he jumped out. Yeah. Like, he'd attract so much attention because he was so big and strong himself. So, like...
And skillful.
The smaller hookers, you can... Yeah. The danger is the show and go. Yeah. Not the forceful barge over a lot of the time, but he had it all. He was phenomenal.
Mate, he had it all. He was that skillful. But I'm glad Longy said that because there was definitely a connection because he was a good footballer. He was. And,
he said you just opened his eyes to so much, and then I think after you it was Darren Britt. Yeah, Britty. And then
he had a phenomenal season for him too, Britty. But I remember meeting you as a 15-year-old. I remember you coming to the ground, and I actually do remember that. And this is one of our young players, James Graham, coming through, and remember when I saw you, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago down at Wollongong, and you saw me and you couldn't believe it. Yeah, but it's a great club.
Yeah, it is. Just back on that moment so I'd have been like 15, so I'd get invited to come in and sort of like half-baked train with the first grade a bit and say hello, and I just remember being in awe. Like I was a genuine fan. I got introduced to the game of rugby league at 8. Yeah, fell in love with it. St Helens fan, and started to make my way through the ranks and got a little bit of a, I think it's hard to make predictions on who's going to make it and who's not. But I think Saints had high hopes for me, so they brought me in. And I was just.
So you played how many seasons there before you came over here?
9 seasons.
You had 9 seasons. Yeah. How many games all up have you played?
Like over 4.
Yeah, because Kieran's over 500, isn't he?
I think his record's just been got broke by James Roby, who followed Kieran.
Kieran,
which is incredible.
Yeah, incredible.
Absolutely incredible. Yeah. But I think Kieran, he actually played back-to-back years when it switched from winter to summer, which is, I think they got like a 3-week off season.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But there's so many players there that I would have loved to have seen come over here, but as a fan to see you, and it's funny how life works. That 15-year-old kid that would have just been head down, like wouldn't look anyone in the eye, would have been in awe of his. Well, you're my heroes. Yeah. Like you were my actual heroes. I'd sit on the wall and watch you play, and like be living and dying by the results. Like mate, that Broncos game, like. What that did to Saints fans and to young aspiring rugby league players that, you know, had Australia and this Broncos team with Lockyer, with Tallis, with Webke, with Petro. It's like them off, like they're on this pedestal and it's like, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah. Like my team beat them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I knew we could beat them. Yeah. I knew we could beat them.
Like I say, I'd work a fair bit with Gordon Tarson. I would say, like, I got the orange Nike boots. Because he had those orange Nike boots. Yeah. And then here we are. My team's playing against that. And it's like, wow. Yeah. Like we beat them.
Remember the borough of St Helens put up around, when you went in there was a sign, you are entering the home of the World Club Champions, St Helens. They were that proud of it.
Mate, it was...
It's a rugby. I love the history of that, of rugby league in the north of England. I love it. It's phenomenal. It's a special place, a special club. My daughter was born there. So she's a Western hospital. So she was born in the borough of St Helens.
They just don't do good coffee though, do they?
No. They do a good beer.
They do good
beer, good pubs. But then the new stadium is good, and I was blessed to have my mural up there with Mal.
Yes.
But I end up, so I was on a 1-year deal and I was on a lot of pressure they wanted me to re-sign and I desperately wanted to play again. And I thought, can I do it again? Have I got it in me? Because I'd set such a high standard from Newcastle to St Helens to achieve what I did. I'm a big believer in be good at the end, and you're always remembered for how you finish. And I thought, have I got the energy to go again? And so I said yes. I agreed, and I signed, and I agreed for another year. And then we're getting towards the end of the year. I injured my shoulder, and I had a week off, and then I played again, and I was in a game, hurt it again, and I remember had to get pain-killing injections that did nothing, and had to get more at half time. And the doctor said, mate, I said, I can't give you any more. He said, you've like, it's now dangerous to give you any more. So, I needed shoulder surgery. So I kept playing. So we get to the semi-finals, and we're playing Hull in Hull, and it's a game we had to win. So, I don't know, we're 10 minutes into the game. I hurt my shoulder, and I get this poke in the eye that is as bad as poke in the eye as I've ever had. So we had Wigan the next week to make the grand final. So I had the shoulder, and by Thursday I was still double vision in this eye. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I can do it again, another season. So I got through the game. Yeah, did the best I could, and then I went and had a chat with the chairman, Eamon McManus, and I just said, mate, I don't think I can play again another season at the level that I've just played. I need surgery. I felt that I could really feel that what I did from the first day of day one pre-season Newcastle to this moment now at St Helens, the energy that I'd invested, yes, I got rewarded for it. I'm proud of it, but can I do it again? I don't think I can. And I said to him, mate, I'm thinking I don't want to honour the last year of my contract. I don't think I can play I could have played. There's no
credit
question.
to you, mate, because you know what? Many people would have just took the money up until, and just sat out and not performed at the level of that they're capable of.
It was never an option.
Yeah.
It was never an option.
There's a lot to be said.
There's no doubt that people would have done that.
I know people that have. So,
yeah. But it was never an option. And to Amon's credit, he respected my decision, and it ended. And I look back on it and just think, just those 2 years of not getting picked up by the Northern Eagles was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Greatest thing, because I changed my mindset.
Yeah.
And I'd just come off a year, the previous year, it was really a tough year. My father, so he'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer in about June in '97, and you're probably going to ask me about a sliding doors moment, but this is one of them. So I was leaving North, so Wayne Bennett had flown down, and we met at Steve Crawley's house. You'd know Steve, Central Coast boy and good mate of mine. Shook hands, agreed, and I agreed, and I was going to the Brisbane Broncos for the '98 season. And so we negotiated that early in 1997. June '97, Dad gets diagnosed. It says you've got 6 to 12 months to live. He lasted 10. So he died on the Wednesday before round one. So he died on Wednesday. I'm playing Saturday. There's a minute's silence for your dad. That was a tough game.
I bet it was.
Yeah. So that was a sliding doors moment. I thought I was going to Brisbane and had to ring Wayne. Obviously, Wayne respected. I had to be at home for those reasons, and then that didn't happen. So the next sliding doors moment for me was not getting picked up knowing I'm not getting picked up, getting pressured to play the season out and don't worry about your shoulder. And I just said, I learned from that, and I just said, no, you just can get stuffed. I said, I'm getting my shoulder fixed, because wherever I go next, I'm all in. Yeah. And getting that phone call from Warren Ryan to say, we want you to come to Newcastle. And the fact that I played at Newcastle Knights for nothing and cleaned up and won everything there is just, I went there for the right reasons.
That's it. And you got more than what money could ever give you.
I look at, that by not getting picked up by the Northern Eagles, I'd never have gone to St Helens. It would never have happened.
No.
So that sliding doors moment sent me to Newcastle, sent me to St Helens, and what I achieved at both clubs, I look back on now and really proud of.
Yeah, good.
Did some good things at North, but I remember what I did at Newcastle and Saints more than anything I ever did at North.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into those last 4 questions. You've covered the sliding doors. I'll have a look at your dream spine. I know this is very difficult, and you've put some work into this one as well, Daisy. So
I don't know about work, but it is a hard question, because the dream spine is, wow. You look at different areas, but look, my dream spine. I got 2 dream spines. I got the A dream spine and the B dream spine.
Oh, okay. Or the nightmare
Slater.
Yeah.
Langer. Lockyer. Cunningham. That's my dream spine. And then the backup dream spine was Inglis, Johns, Fittler, Badeiros.
Wow.
So
that's how much you rate Kieran?
Yeah, that's how much I rate him. I played with him. I played with him at the peak of his career. I played with Danny when he was not at the peak. He was a great player, but he was still getting better. And luckily enough, first couple of years of coaching, I was assistant there and managed to coach Bedsy. And Bedsy can stand alongside Cameron Smith and Kieran Cunningham any day of the week. But
have you seen? You might have even played in the game. If you YouTube Kieran Cunningham cover tackle, it is.
Yeah.
I don't think you've seen some.
I haven't, but I will.
There's some great. I'll send it to you. There's some great cover tackles that happen in our game.
Yeah.
But this is the one that you just go, I don't know how he did it.
Yeah.
It's actually insane. It actually doesn't make sense how he
some
managed.
players just have an absolute will.
Yeah.
To never give in. Two players I've seen that I coached, Nathan Hindmarsh, just refused.
Friend of the show, actually. Yeah.
Refused not to try.
Yeah.
Could not. Didn't know how not to give 100%. Halftime, wouldn't sit down. Would not take a seat at halftime. You stop, you drop. He'd stand up every single halftime. He would never take a seat. And then the other one is Jonathan Thurston.
Yeah.
Mate, you want a guy like him in every team. Andrew Johns was the
They're
same.
so rare though. Like
they're hard to get, and you would know, those players in your team when the video's on and you're talking through it, and the coach wants to skip through the next edit, and they go, no, hang on, go back, and then they'll pull someone up in the team who hasn't met their assignment or missed the mark, and Jonathan was one of those guys. And talk about this will to win. Jonathan, first year there, he did his shoulder, and he'd had a Rico, and he wasn't required to do pre-season until after Christmas. Anyway, so he's driving past, and he calls in, and the boys are doing the 1.2, and he's rocked up in his boardies and thongs and his singlet, and he said, "What are they doing?" "Oh, they're about to do the 1.2," and he's like, "Going to do this?" I said, "Mate, you don't need to do it, John. Don't do it. Don't be stupid."
Was he in a sling as well? Or?
No, he's out of the sling by this stage. So, mate, I think I'm not going to say he was barefooted. He may have grabbed a pair of shoes. Probably did grab a pair of shoes. Board shorts on, singlet. He'd been there for 5 minutes. Okay, go. Away he went. Halfway through it, he was nowhere near going to win this, and then you could just see him. He was just mowing everyone. Next person, okay, got him. See the next one, and he won it. On pure, just absolute will to just refuse to quit and not give in. Then he had a mouth of water and said, "See you later, boys. That's how it's done." Drove off into his car. Just see you later. He couldn't comprehend. He'd cop errors, and I seen him hook into some players big time for not trying. He could cop errors, but he could not cop not giving 100%. It just does not register with him.
Yeah.
And Hindy was like that. Hindy was a phenomenal competitor.
Yeah.
I know
I'll have to pick his game up when he's on here on a Monday.
Yeah.
If football didn't exist, what do you think you would have done?
Mate, that's an interesting question, because I can remember as far back as year 8 careers class, and you had to go in and everyone was, "What do you want to do?" And I was year 8, I was 14. I said, "I want to be an NRL player."
Did you?
I can never at any stage ever once recalling wanting to be anything other than an NRL player. But based on the things that interest me now, I would love to get a job in wildlife conservation or animals. Or,
really?
Yeah. Mate of mine's got a job with the government who goes around photographing and documenting endangered species. And I love talking to him about it. And I just think, mate, that'd be the best job ever.
Mate, that is the most unique answer to this question because normally they're pretty generic.
Yeah.
Something to do with sport.
Particularly with birds for me. I've kept birds and parrots, anyone that knows me, since I was 10.
Really?
I still have birds now. And but yeah, my mate who goes around and documents and photographs endangered species, oh mate, I talk to him all day about it. I love it.
Wow. That's a great
because
answer.
that's what interests me. And but in terms of what I can remember going to the big careers seminar that they had at Gosford High School, and I remember the teacher, Mr. Borg, stood me up in front of the entire class because it was the only person in the class that didn't put down a proper job that I want to work towards. I said I want to play back then the ARL or the New South Wales Rugby League. That's what I want to do. I want to play rugby league. I could never ever remember a time that was not going to happen.
That's awesome. I love that. The most interesting person you've met along the way. It's not your mate that photographs birds, is it?
He is interesting, and he's a childhood friend. I've met a lot of very interesting people. I love talking to people who have a genuine story to tell. You know, I love talking to is old footballers. They just got this story of how things were back in the day and how things were done. And yeah, I find knowledge and inspiration in everyone. My poor old neighbour who died a few years ago, I used to love going up and having a chat with old Billy Birch. He was late 90s, nearly 100, and he fought in World War II.
Yeah.
And I'd go up there at 10 o'clock in the morning and he'd go, "Dave, you want a scotch?" I said, "Yeah, Billy, let's have one." And I'd sit there and I'd talk to him, and I'm talking to a guy who came out to Australia on a boat when he was 8. Can remember going to a funeral as a kid in England where they carried the coffin on a horse and cart.
Wow.
And then he's talking to me about fighting in World War II. And you look at it, World War II stuff, and you think that's generations ago. But I'm talking to a guy who fought in World War II and telling me his story, and then what he went through and what he did, and then how he came back, and then he put himself to become an accountant, didn't work out, become a pharmacist, lived in Melbourne, and then for whatever reason, somehow in Melbourne, he used to come up to this place where I live now, Terrigal, and he built a house and bought a house up there, and that's where he lived, and that's where he died. And his stories, mate, to talk to someone who's actually fought in the war, World War II, they were crazy. But yeah, everyone's got interest. So I'm right into it at the moment. Fascinated by these stories of people who take on these challenges of stuff like climbing Everest, anything over the 8,000 metres where people are in the death zone, and you're with a team of people, mate. You make one mistake, you die.
Yeah.
Like there's watching about 5 different shows at once about someone makes an error, you don't work as a team. If someone's selfish, mate, someone dies. And it's the same with MotoGP. These guys, one error, mate, they die. Big wave surfers, they die. And the one that's really fascinating, and everyone I think should watch it. Have you ever seen a documentary called Free Solo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these guys, these guys their whole life is on the edge of their finger on a 5mm ledge, and they're over a kilometre in the air. They're comfortable.
One move and that's it. They find comfort. They have to be.
Yeah, and
because if they're stressing, it's
there. I find that I find that stuff fascinating. But I've been listening a lot. You'd like this is wouldn't you love Roy Keane in your club? Oh, mate, have been listening to a lot of Roy Keane on YouTube.
Yeah,
what a man to have in your team. Loves rugby league.
He does, yeah.
And talk about tough. I didn't actually never realised how tough soccer was until I was over there and I went to a game.
Let's not get carried away. It's
I watched Alan Shearer,
yeah,
mate, and he just brutalised anyone that come within that net. And you listen to Roy Keane talk about how the standards he set, how he ran the dressing room. Hey, you want to behave like that, mate? How he pulled people in the line in that.
He was a
Manchester
real leader.
United.
I love that clip where he's down the tunnel with Vieira at Arsenal. And he's like, fucking see out there.
Yeah.
We'll see out there.
Yeah.
Like, and because Vieira picks on Gary Neville.
Yeah.
And he goes into bat for his teammate. And it's like,
Yeah. And how he guided all those young guys that were coming through, I think the Skulls and the Beckhams. And one of them had a little fancy little flick up thing he used to do. And he said, mate, you ever do that again? Like he ran that dressing shed. Great, tough man. Great lessons in any sport.
I enjoy Roy Keane.
Yeah.
All right, Daisy, I think that'll just about wrap us up. It's been fascinating to speak to you.
Mate, it's great to speak to you.
And mate, like you told two stories in one, the current role, which is fascinating, and the insight that you've given us there in terms of the relationship with the coaches and what our game can look like moving forward. And then, your career that you had as a footballer, it's hard to top with the Rothmans medal winner, your time at the Bears, the impact at Newcastle one season, the impact at Saints one season, the Kangaroos Tour, the State of Origin Series victory. And mate, you got a teenage boy that used to idolise the club of St Helens, but when you came, like, wow, I can still remember. I was on the terraces watching you. For you to say you remember me coming as a 15-year-old doesn't seem to stack up. But I really appreciate you coming on, taking your time out. It's been a fascinating conversation. It really has.
Appreciate it, Jimmy, and likewise, mate. I've got great respect for everything you've done as well.
Cheers, mate.
Great to be here.